All right, so the purpose of this video is to talk with you a little bit about your first paper assignment. It's due by Blackboard Safe Assign by September 28th, and you'll be writing about the decision of the court and the dissent in the case Citizens United versus FEC. Now let me just first clarify how this fits into the course overall. Let's go to the syllabus. Most of what you've been doing so far falls into this category: reading, quizzes, and activities. I've been calling them tests because I was carrying over from some language that was already in place. But really, I should have been calling these quizzes because they've been very low stakes so far, 1 or 2 points per question or per answer. And you've also done one discussion board assignment, and that was worth 60 points out of 1,000. This assignment that you're going to write now is worth 200 points out of 1,000, so pretty significantly more heavily weighted compared to the things that you've been doing so far. So let's go back to the assignment prompt. And let me point out the readings that you'll be looking at. The decision of the court was written by Kennedy, and you'll find that in your Readings in American Politics book. It starts on page 493. I will also attach a copy of those excerpts and I've to this week's work, just in case some of you don't have that textbook in hand yet. You will also be reading the dissent that was written by Justice Stevens, and that is attached to this week's work. You'll also go online to locate at least one article that's critical of the decision and one that's supportive of the decision, and you'll have a citation from each of those in your paper. Now, the case itself is about campaign finance, and what was at stake was a federal law that said that corporations and unions could not use their treasury money to purchase campaign ads close to an election. And the question was whether this is a violation of the First Amendment. The court held that it was a violation of the First Amendment, and so they struck down that provision of campaign finance, which means that corporations and unions can use their money to directly purchase campaign ads. Now, after this case, the FEC set up a new type of campaign organization called a super PAC. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of these. So they were not in existence before this case came about. Okay? Now, I want to talk a little bit more about PACs and super PACs to set the context for you, how these things work. And I'll take you to a website, opensecrets.org, that collects campaign contribution data. And the first thing I want to do is show you what a regular old PAC looks like. I like to call it a regular old PAC. This is the kind of PAC that was in existence before this case and is still in existence, and see how they work. So we have a regular old PAC. Let's look at the top ones. I'm just going to look at AT&T PAC. And you can see that AT&T PAC has about $2.5 million in it. And let's look at who is giving money to AT&T PAC. So you can see there's a very long list here, and you'll notice that the donors are all people. You'll not find anything but people on this list. You might find other PACs, but you won't find anything but people. You will certainly not find a corporation. Corporations can't give money directly to their PAC. In other words, AT&T could not take out its corporate checkbook and write a check to this PAC. But the people who contribute to the PAC, you'll notice, all work for AT&T. Obviously, right? Why would anybody want to contribute to AT&T PAC unless they worked for AT&T? The PAC is going to turn around and give money in the name of AT&T, right? Now let's see what the amounts are. You can see that they're all fairly small amounts. This is probably an automatic deduction from their paycheck once a month. And if you were to add up all of the contributions each of these people made in the year, I would guess that it was the maximum, which is about $5,400 per person can give to a PAC. Now they're going to turn around and give this money. Let's see who they're giving their money to. Right? The PAC itself is going to turn around and give money in elections to people running for office. And you can see that in the House, for instance, you might notice that they're giving to both Democrats and Republicans. They are buttering their bread on both sides, is the way we refer to it. They're pretty much giving to almost everybody in the House. And the reason they're giving more to Republicans is simply that there are more Republicans in the House right now. The maximum amount they can give to somebody running for office is about $10,000. So this right here is probably a mistake. It probably maybe is going to carry over into the next year. I'm not sure why. You know, I've seen this before where you'll see an amount that's above the maximum and then later it will be fixed. Who polices this? Well, the FEC does not have a bunch of people on staff. Taxpayers don't provide money for that to police all of these things. The people that are going to police it are going to be his opponents. They're going to be looking at every dollar he receives, which is disclosed on through this website, to see if there's anything wrong. Okay, so that's a regular old PAC. All right, now let's take a look at Super PAC, and we can see the difference that Citizens United made. Super PACs, with my classes, we've all been looking at the top, let's see, PAC that was giving to in the other class we were looking at a different PAC. For some reason I don't see it here. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. This is the PAC we were all, one PAC that you could, Super PAC that you could take a look at. You can see donors. So this is a Super PAC set up to support Hillary Clinton. And you'll notice a couple of differences here. First, the amounts are enormous compared to the other PAC. The other type of PAC. These are unlimited. You could add, this is $6 million, but certainly you could add 3 zeros to that. You could add 6 zeros to that. There's no cap. You'll see on this list mostly people, but if you scroll down, you'll also start to see some unions, and you could also see corporations listed here. That is what was permitted under Citizens United, the ability to contribute to a Super PAC. Okay, now one of the things that's pretty striking though is that most of these are individuals. We're not seeing as many corporations giving corporate money into Super PACs. But at any rate, obviously lots more money, and we could certainly also look at the PAC for somebody, say, in the other party. Let's look at this one that had been set up to support Ted Cruz before, and donors to that PAC. Obviously, again, very large donations, and these are all the same person. So obviously we're talking $15 million here being given to this Super PAC. Now let's look at the recipients. All of these will say the same thing. They didn't make any contributions directly to federal candidates because they're not allowed to, right? Super PACs are not allowed to give money directly to candidates. What they can do is what's called independent expenditures. They can produce and pay for a television ad on their own, and that's called independent expenditures. All right. Now, they are not supposed to give money. They are not supposed to be talking to the candidates directly. They cannot give money to the candidates directly, and they're not supposed to be talking to the candidates. They're not supposed to be coordinating with the candidates. Supposed to be all on their own. Now, there's a lot of winking and nodding going on in the campaign finance world right now. It's clear that people who were working for super PACs are working for campaigns now, and people working for the candidate committees are working for super PACs. Now, you'll see this is a chart that was put together by NPR. One of the shows trying to explain how this process works. So individuals can give money to all these different kinds of groups, right? PACs can give money to candidate committees and to and also to other kinds of political action committees. Just a moment. And so you'll see here, corporations cannot give money to regular old PACs, and they cannot give money directly to candidate committees. A candidate committee is when somebody decides they're going to run for office, they file the paperwork and open up a bank account and start accepting checks. It's quite different than a political action committee or a super PAC, obviously. And so super PACs were set up after Citizens United to kind of be a medium for regulating the new money that was now going to be permitted to be spent by corporations and unions in the election cycle. Now, one of the things that I want you to think about, let me go back to the prompt here. What I want, the assignment is going to require you to do a couple things. Number one, summarize the arguments made by Kennedy and Stevens in their pieces of the decision. And I want 4 direct citations from each one of those with the reference to the pagination in the editions I've given you. And you're going to summarize the arguments, but you're also going to talk about how or whether their arguments address the issue of wealthy individuals using super PACs. So I just showed you some data that you know, showing points of the fact that wealthy individuals are using super PACs quite a lot, and whether the decision gets to that is one of the things I want you to think about. But mostly I want you to focus on summarizing these two pieces, and then to explain which approach you find most persuasive. Are you more persuaded by Kennedy's arguments or by Stevens' arguments? And in explaining that, you need to say very clearly what you like about the side you like and what you don't like about the side you don't like. Now, there are some pointers I want to make here. Number one, when you're reading the Kennedy, skip the first 5 pages. Really, the arguments that you need to summarize begin on page 498 in Readings in American Politics, with the paragraph that starts, "The First Amendment provides that." Okay, the preceding pages were really a question of procedural standing that really shouldn't have been in that in the excerpts. So you can skip over that. That'll make it a lot easier for you. And you can notice the rubric down here: 10 points for grammar and citation, 40 points for the summary, and 50 points for the critical. So each of these, 40 points here and 50 points here. You can also get some extra credit by including some information from opensecrets.org about super PACs. All right. Now, I want to just quickly show you the Stevens at the very least, because I did this with my face-to-face classes, and some of the students said, I don't know what I'm reading. I don't understand this. And really, it's not that hard. What you need to make sure that you're not doing is getting lost in the forest for the trees. And so I pointed out a paragraph that's going to be very helpful, and this is in the Stevens, in the first paragraph on the second page. You'll see the court, their decision rests on several premises, Stevens says. First, the court claims that it's a ban on corporate speech. Second, they claim that you can't distinguish between speaker identities. And third, they claim that it is a violation of the First Amendment tradition. Those are fairly, those three pieces then form the structure of the paper that you'll be looking at. So here's the first part, the so-called ban. That's the first one here. And then if you scroll through, you'll find the second part, identity-based distinctions. So what you need to do is kind of take a big, back up a little bit and think about what are the main arguments in each of these parts. What is he trying to say about identity-based distinctions? Now, the way the process works is when Kennedy wrote his piece, he was chosen to write the decision of the court. That's what becomes law. And then when he finishes writing his decision, he circulates it to the other 8 justices. So Stevens had it in his hand when he wrote his dissent. And then after Stevens wrote his dissent, then he circulated it to everybody as well. So Kennedy also had Stevens' dissent so he could decide if he wanted to make any changes to his decision based on what Stevens had said. And they'll go back and forth like that until everybody's happy and nobody wants to make any more changes. So you should really think of these two pieces, Kennedy and Stevens, as a discussion back and forth about the issues. And if Stevens is going to talk about an issue like identity-based distinctions, you better make sure you find the argument in Kennedy. What does Kennedy say about that? So there should be some symmetry in your argument, in your paper, in the summary. You should find arguments about the same things in both of your summaries. Now, I just want to point out there were 3 parts that he mentioned that the court talks about, but there's a 4th part also in Stevens' piece. The very last part of Stevens' piece is called the anti-corruption interest, okay? And also quid pro quo corruption. Now, that means that Stevens introduces this other issue about corruption that he thinks that the court didn't pay very much attention to. So what you'll need to do is say what Stevens says about corruption, and then make sure you go back to Kennedy's decision and find where Kennedy talks about corruption. He does talk about it very briefly, so make sure that you understand the back and forth also about corruption, okay? Now, I've tried to set it up as best I can, what the assignment's going to be about, and how you can best approach it. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know what those questions are, and I will also share them with the rest of the class so that everybody can see answers that I give, just like I would in a face-to-face class. All right.